So today on this conscious leadership conversation, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome Brian Cunningham, who's calling in from Hawaii. And I was telling Brian, I have dreamt about going to Hawaii for a long, long time. And I guess today we have a guest from Hawaii, so probably a good reason for me to go visit him soon. So Brian, welcome.
Thank you, Stefan.
So Brian, can you tell us a bit about yourself first?
Yeah, that's an easy one, Stefan. I consider myself just a human being, no really different than anyone else. My journey has been just as confusing as anybody else's journey. I think maybe one of the differences, well, it's not really a difference. There's many others like us out there. From a young age, I was an explorer, inner explorer, seeker. I had the big question in front of my mind from an early age. What are we doing here? Why are we here? And that was sort of the backdrop of my life, So as I was getting impacted by the same types of programming that everybody else gets impacted by, that question just loomed over me. So as I got into the workforce, starting as a parking lot attendant at a large hospital in Philadelphia, that question was on my mind. And as I moved through that organization and into various positions, I was drawn, pulled into understanding sort of the interrelationship between what was going on in the workplace, the workforce, the leaders. I was studying leadership from a very early age. I've been a student of leadership. So through this journey, as a parking lot attendant, an elevator operator, and as a clinician in healthcare, and then into leadership positions, my observations have been around what is this thing, leadership? What is its real function? What is its best expression? I saw some very good expressions. I saw some very bad expressions. I was looking to understand really the fundamental impulse of leadership. What is it? So I looked at it and studied it and stared at it throughout my journey. And this sort of led to some discoveries along the way through my collaborations with many other people, reading many books, going to many workshops. But it was really the intense sort of presence with it, staring at it, playing with it, exploring it, experimenting with it, with others. In the real crucible, the test tube of the leadership followership dynamic, that's where things started to emerge for me, and some clarity started to come about what leadership really is. As my awareness grew through some very intentional practices, I could see things and apply them in ways that were more supportive of other human beings. And then at some point I decided, this model started to become more and more clear to me, how I could serve more people and better. And that, and the book followed that sort of progression. I wanted to share more and contribute like you in the International Center for Conscious Leadership. I'm on that same journey. So
you wrote a book?
Yes.
Called The Leadership Revolution.
Yes.
So can you tell us a bit about this book came about?
Yeah, it came about really as a result of the work of leadership. I did not set out to write a book. I set out to serve better, to serve others better. And along the way, I was collaborating with many others and modeling approaches to leadership and clarifying things and reading and integrating all this information and creating a functional output from that. People would ask me, well, what book did this come from? Where did you get this? And at the time I would say, well, I just sort of raised my hands up. It's sort of everywhere. As you know, Stefan, there's so many great books out there that have these pieces of the puzzle, but there's very few places where you can see the whole progression of leadership unfold or see it mapped out and understand how these pieces fit together. So more and more people would ask, well, where do I get this? What book? And so I thought, well, let me apply myself to laying that map out and clarifying it for others. So that was really the genesis of the book writing. and, took, of course, several years, and it's always refining and moving forward. But that was really the genesis of the book.
Very good. And, we're talking about leadership. So if you were to talk to someone who's never heard about leadership, what would you tell them? What's leadership for you?
Foundationally, I've studied it, looked at it, and have read so many beautiful definitions of leadership. They're all great, but something still kept pulling me deeper. I see many of these definitions, they discuss traits of leadership. Leadership is about being visionary, and it most certainly is, but that's an output. And so my pull, I was drawn to what is there foundationally. And so once again, for me, the fundamental impulse of leadership sits in this concept of love in action. So to me, if somebody asked me, I would tell them, from my perspective, the meaning of leadership is love in action. Love, if we could define that, our experience of our connection as human beings. So many of our challenges, as you know, Stefan, come from our perception of our separation. So when we have the experience of our connection, right, that establishes our being, our certain mindset. And then action represents the doing of leadership, the strategic, systematic approach to getting things accomplished. So to me, the meaning of leadership is love and action, our being and doing, those two components. And then everything we do can become an expression of leadership. I don't have to worry about how visionary I am being or how strategic versus operational, all these sort of outputs of leadership. If I am operating grounded in love and action, I am serving others as a leader.
Brian, I believe life is magical. You and I talked about that. Before you said love and action, I wrote these 3 words on my page 5 seconds before. So when you said it, I said, what? Because it's like when I asked you the question, I wrote on my page love and action, because for me, leadership is love and action.
Yeah.
And then you said those three words 5 seconds after. So
that's how it works,
Yeah, I know. And a friend of mine, I translated a podcast she did in an article, and I talked about slowing down to the speed of nature, the rhythm of nature.
Yes.
And I just ran a webinar with a friend in Spain, and she actually talked about slowing down to the speed of nature. So yeah, it's a beautiful day for me today, and it's not over yet.
Yeah.
So, I love the word love. I'm in love with love, because I think love is the foundation of everything.
Yes.
That is good.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm told that it's also the foundation of things that are not so good, because they allow us to transform. And it's sometimes difficult to accept that.
Yes.
So you worked in healthcare.
Yes.
You work in healthcare now.
Still, yes.
And to me, healthcare, I would love for it to be rebranded the healing industry.
Yes.
However, at least in my country, I can't talk about where you work. Very often it's a corrective system. We fix what's wrong. There's not enough prevention. We don't talk about energy. Anything that is holistic is often considered woo-woo.
Yeah.
So can we talk about love in healthcare?
Sure.
What's the importance of love in healthcare?
And I would sort of broaden that. I really struggle to separate it out from anything else, from healthcare or manufacturing or our lives for that matter. Love is love. And so when we apply it from a leadership perspective, irrespective of the industry that we work in, it can look and feel similar. So love in healthcare or love anywhere else, once again, is rooted in that experience of our connection, that we are connected, that we are expressions of each other, that we are all valuable, and we're here to serve each other. And so love in action or leadership in healthcare looks like that there's a constant sort of inward and outward perception of what is going on, that I'm perceiving my own thoughts and feelings and looking at my own purpose as it gets expressed out towards others, and then positions me to respond to others no matter what's going on in their world. They might be struggling, right? There's a lot of pain and struggle in the world, whether you're in healthcare or any other industry, and it expresses itself in our daily workplace. People are upset and offended and hurt, and it comes through in your daily interactions. So when you are present to that, you're able to respond to things much more differently at a much deeper level. As you know, Stefan, you begin to be able to see the question behind the question somebody may be asking. You see the issue behind the issue, and so that we can address things on a much deeper level. And so no matter which industry we're in, we can talk about healthcare in the United States and its evolution, or the evolution of any other industry. And that sort of is what it is. There's bigger forces at play that move those things for good or bad. But your individual leadership and my individual leadership and others' individual leadership within that structure can create a very unique experience, no matter what industry we work in. So that's sort of my focus. Yes, I'm part of moving things forward in healthcare and anything else that I touch, but there are bigger forces at play there. My focus is on who's in front of me. How can I serve in this moment with whoever is in front of me? 1 person, 2 person, 10 people, 100 people. So from that perspective, it doesn't matter if I work in the prison system or in manufacturing or in a bowling alley or healthcare. The fundamental impulse of leadership is still there, to love, grow, and serve others.
This is very profound what you said. I discovered love and leadership 12 years ago. And in 2008, I was a VP, and I transformed in 22 months a business unit that I really, really struggled for a long time. And when I was done, you do these things. Not a lot of people want to come and help you because they don't want to touch a 10-foot pole because it could be career damaging. And then one day, the head office hired this high-powered consultant from Boston on culture to come interview me. And then after we talked, he said, "What did you do?" And then I described a bit, and then something came up. I said, "I think I loved people, like they had never been loved before."
Yeah.
And he listened to me, and we chatted, and he says, "You got it. You got it. This is how we transform culture. It's really true love and creating this space, for people to perform and create because they're not afraid." So, I talked about love in healthcare because, my son spends quite a bit of time in the hospital because he has a disease. And my dad died not too long ago. And I was observing, the system and the more close to the patient the people are, the more love they show. My dad was dying, so someone had to, clean his diaper and all this.
Yes.
And they were
I've been
really
there.
kind, and those people were really kind. Not even the nurses, whatever you call these people that do these front level tasks. We barely saw the doctors because they're so busy.
Yes.
But I did feel, even though it was a dramatic, the end of a life of sorts, I felt a lot of love, caring, and can we help, and can we? So and sometimes I see these frontline people, and because the system, at least in where I live, is very intense, cutting costs, we're trying to make it into a machine, productivity, and let's use the Toyota production system in the hospitals and more patient per hour. And because you're in the system, you're actually running a health center. Can you share the balance? How do we, because, at some point you have to be cost effective, budgets are cut. How do you maintain this loving atmosphere and this caring, the caring for the people involved?
For me personally, it's sort of a natural expression. As, I said earlier, I started as a parking lot attendant, an elevator operator, and transporter. I was a frontline worker for many, many years. I then got I went to school, was a clinician, had a degree in nuclear medicine, technology, and then as an occupational therapist. So the diapers you talk about cleaning, that was one of my functions. And so I'm intimately connected to the experience of healthcare and serving people at sort of some of their most challenging times and bringing still some dignity to that experience. And so as I then felt the pull to serve in leadership, and moved into, director role and then operations and then as the CEO, I can never forget that those many years of experience in directly serving the people that I worked with, right? It's a team sport. When we take care of each other better, excuse me, the patient or the customer is much better served. So my grounding has been in, being clear within my own self about love in action and the power of that. And then serving and supporting the person next to me, whoever that is, so that we can then serve that patient or customer as best we can. And again, it is just in my genetics at this point. So as I moved into leadership roles, I don't really have these sort of rules of leadership. Maybe one that I would speak to, and that rule is, as Stefan, you and I and so many others flip this on its head, the rule is they don't serve us as leaders, we serve them. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the mantra and the theme that I verbalize and live from. So as a leader in healthcare, how do you do this? Well, you grounded in the very real experience of serving at various levels and with an understanding of the value that everybody brings to the table. Like experientially, I know the value of housekeeping in any organization. I know the value of the cook and the dishwasher and the nurse. I've worked side by side with them. I know the value of physicians. I know the value of human beings. I see the value of the patient. And when you can so clearly see that and connect with it, your leadership cannot help but be an ongoing expression of that, even in the real challenging situations. And so my leadership expression and the program that I put together then was to support others. How can I then create this experience for others so that they can see it and feel it, so that we can all express it more consistently and at higher and higher, more expanded levels of expression?
It's as we become conscious leaders, it's not that we're better people, we're just more aware. And for me, it is completely the inverse pyramid. When I was young, I wanted to be on top. I could direct, and as I became more conscious, I actually became a servant. And
yes,
and my whole life has shifted in my own journey as an entrepreneur when I chose to serve, and not only serve people, but serve consciousness, serve humanity, serve. And I go wherever I'm asked to serve. And this is why I meet so many incredible people like you and so many around the world. And I love what you said. There's supposedly a quote from someone that, someone met John F. Kennedy. And this weekend I went to see the movie about the Apollo, landing on the moon. And I was reminded of that quote when Kennedy supposedly asked a janitor at Cape Canaveral, "What do you do?" He says, "I'm helping put a man on the moon."
Yeah, right.
So someone had done a really good job to give meaning to this person's job,
Yes.
And I think that's what conscious leaders do,
Agreed.
You can be a janitor in a hospital, but because you do a great job, there's less germs and people, it's a clean space for a patient to heal. So everyone's job is equally important, if not more important.
Correct. Correct.
Let me ask you about a bit personal. I think that most of us, it's certainly been my journey. For me to really rise in consciousness, I've had to face significant challenges, personal, professional. Because for me, it was necessary because the ego was so strong. I was following society's program.
Sure.
It has been true for a lot of people that I've coached, because the ego is so strong that we don't want to get out of it. And we kind of need to be thrown off the horse really bad, to fall on our butt and okay, now it's time to change. Can you share about an experience or a few experiences that have really contributed to you growing into this conscious leader that you are now?
I think the main experience, of course, there were individual challenges along the way, but the main one for me, I sort of alluded to earlier, was this sort of lifelong nagging, this thing in my mind that was not satisfied, that was telling me this isn't it, that I was constantly feeling confused. I was constantly in a little bit of anxiety that something that I was being presented with, the programming, as you said earlier, was not it, was not right. I was missing something significant. So I had this feeling, even in high school, I had this feeling, what am I here for? Why? So this nagging. So yeah, lots of challenges along the way. But the big challenges, the backdrop to that was this nagging feeling that something wasn't right. There was something I did not understand. And that was impacting my life. And later on, as I read and studied, not just leadership, but all kinds of personal growth material and spiritual material and going to workshops, trying to get, and of course, meditating and other self-awareness exercises, things started to get clearer for me. And I can remember this day, Stefan, that it became clear to me. I was in a leadership role and still working as a therapist and working with patients, so in that in-between role. And it became just clear to me that I was here to serve. That's it, that question that had nagged me. And that meant nothing specifically, just that I was here to serve whoever was in front of me. And I can remember I was talking to our CEO one day, and I said to him, John, I finally got this thing figured out, this question that's been nagging me. He said, well, what's that? And I told him, I'm here to serve. And he said, well, in my role, he was the CEO of the hospital, in my role, I get to serve a lot of people. So without a thought, I instantly replied, then I want your job. And he said, oh, okay. Well, let's talk about how you can build a bridge to get there. And so I had no desire, no goal, I'm going to be the CEO someday. I got clear about service. And when he told me that he got to serve a lot of people, that was it. And that started sort of that pathway. But for me, it was at that point, from that point forward, it was always grounded in service. Consciously. I think prior to that, it was my unconscious driver. But then it became a conscious driver. And Stefan, when you get clear about things, then it gets you're dangerous at that point, right? You are laser focused, and there it goes.
Yeah, a friend of mine who's a quantum physicist explained to me the way consciousness. He actually did a master's in biology to see how consciousness emerges in the body and the cells. And we had a beautiful conversation one time, and he talked to me about serendipity. He says, once you are truly aligned to your mission, what you're meant to be doing, and once you have healed a bit, some of the wounds from the past, fears, limiting beliefs.
Yes.
Then you allow in your consciousness this to be connected to this great power. And then you have a combination of synchronicity and coincidence. And he says, this is serendipity. This is when you take your hand off the wheel and just allow you go where you're asked to go. And, sometimes it's not where you're meant to be going, but that's where you're asked to be,
and look out.
I think now I'm being asked to go do some work in Hawaii with you on
there you go.
I can feel the draw now.
Yes.
Now that I have this connection.
Aloha.
Just before we logged into this call, you and I were talking about world affairs and politics a bit. So we don't want to get into U.S. politics because that's a dangerous terrain. But we do want to talk about world affairs and how conscious leadership applies. And because you and I are just citizens of the world, we live in a country, but we're all citizens. All humans are, coexisting on this one tiny planet. It looks really, really big, but it's really, really tiny, as we go forward. So what's your view about what's going on in the world and about leadership and how conscious it is or how unconscious it is?
I appreciate that question, Stefan. And to me, obviously, I'm sure to you, what's going on in the world, whether it's in industry or politics or whatever, is simply a reflection of the dominant consciousness that exists out there. Plain and simple. That makes things easier to understand. I don't think it's because the majority of people, obviously, it's not because people are bad or not intelligent. There are extremely intelligent, well-meaning, compassionate human beings out there that want the best for their families and everybody. We're way more alike than we are different. However, it's in our level of awareness or consciousness that these expressions of industry or expressions of politics sort of take a left turn. And to me, I saw the same thing in leadership. If we talk about politics or, leaders of industry, we're talking about leadership. It's all leadership. I use that broadest definition. it's, to me, as things have advanced from the information age, this advancement in technology and all these things that have come to us are happening so exponentially quickly, but our consciousness has not kept up. Our awareness of how we interact, our being and doing, has not kept up with that revolutionary pace. Hence, sort of my focus in leadership and the book is about creating and supporting that revolution. We cannot wait. The subtitle to the book is The Leadership Revolution, because evolution takes too long.
Yeah.
We do not have the time anymore. Things are progressing so quickly, and now we are so acutely aware of the challenges that leadership brings to us, because there's this gap, this expanding gap between technology and what the expectations are of all of our customers and fellow humans, and what leadership is delivering. So your work, my work, is focused on closing that gap in a revolutionary way. So, as I look at leadership, or I perceive leadership in these certain levels, or levels of expanded awareness, expanding into consciousness, you see these lower levels. Level 1 and 2, the predominant levels of leadership on the planet. Level 1 comes out of the industrial age, this authoritarian leadership approach. It lives on being in control. Mm-hmm. Level 1 leaders must have control. That's their source of power. Level 2, as we slowly evolve into the information age, that's here right now, that is based around evidence-based leadership, all the information that's available to it. It seeks to be right. So level 1 seeks to be in control. Level 2 uses information to be right. But they're very closely related, right? They're still sources of controlling others. One has a little bit more of expanded viewpoint because it is looking at all the available information and data, versus level 1, just my experience, Stefan. But they're very closely related. So the shorter answer, when I look at politics or industry or the planet, you see this interplay of level 1, level 2, bouncing back and forth. I want to be in control. I want to be right. Look at the data I have. I'm right. Yeah, but I want to be in control. So I'm going to do this so I can maintain control. So you see this back and forth, level 1, level 2, level 1, level 2. And so my goal has been to contribute to this leadership conversation, to clearly map and demonstrate and create experiences for others that there's way more available to us as leaders. Level 1 and 2 represent the status quo amongst the lowest expressions of leadership. That doesn't mean, let me be clear, Stefan, that people are bad or wrong at level 1 or 2. We can do great things at those levels. Level 1, industrial age, built our country, Canada, It's just that expression of leadership, that predominant expression. There have been great leaders in every age, but the predominant expression, authoritarian leadership, no longer serves us. And there is so much more available to us. There's 10 levels in this model. That's just a model. There's so much more available to us, and you're here to share that with people. I'm here to share that with people in a real experiential way. Then we're positioned to step beyond it. If you don't know that anything exists besides level 1 and 2, no matter how smart or committed or compassionate you are, you will still express it through the programming that we're being fed. So your role in life, or one of your mission and your vision, along with mine, is to share a more expanded expression and possibility of leadership, so that others can readily and more easily step into these. That's how we move beyond these limiting expressions.
Brian, one last question. Time
Sure.
flies by.
Yes.
Time flies by when we're having a conscious conversation.
Yes.
So one last question. Life is long, but quite brief in a grand scheme of things.
Yes.
What would you love your legacy to be?
That term I'm not real clear about. What I am clear about is I am here to serve.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever's in front of me, me and you talking here, I'm doing two things here: learning from you and sharing with you. And so my purpose is to do that continually, to learn and grow and expand my awareness so that I can serve others better. That's what I'm here to do with my family, with a person on the street, with my coworkers, with any dialogue that I'm involved in. Wherever that goes, I really don't have a focus on there. It is my presence of service. That's why I'm here.
It's beautiful. I mean, you represent well the work that I do with the Barrett Value Center, the 7 levels of consciousness. The 7th level is being of service, to people, but also to humanity. And I think we serve humanity by serving every single individual. That's how we work.
Yes.
Because, none of us will ever meet the whole of humanity,
Yes.
So I fully echo, because that's also my own mission, to serve everyone that comes into my space for whatever reason. So thank you very much for all these insights.
Thank you, Stefan.
I do take a note here to organize an event, because I'm going all around the world now to organize these conscious leadership event. So I think we got to work together to organize something in Hawaii, because I think we deserve to do it. I deserve to go see you.
Yes, you do.
But I think the island deserves to get more conscious leadership. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I want to, if I could take a second to just thank everybody that has impacted me along the way and I've served with and has helped me to learn. And I want to thank you for that same thing.
Thank you. It's been a beautiful conversation. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Thank you.
You too.